Big time trade news for the Habs as insider Dave Pagnotta reports that multiple teams are looking at Josh Anderson as they believe that a change of scenery could help turn him around. We have to dive into that. Plus a Habs versus Coyotes game where Nick Suzuki gets on the score sheet again, and a lot of underrated guys continue to show their promise. All of that on this episode of Habs Digest. Jesse, we're going to first get into the game, and there's a bit of fun. The Habs 14-0-2 when going into the third period with a lead, and the Ole chance started early with about 6.5 minutes left. The Coyotes got one back, but ultimately it wasn't quite enough. Feel free to pause, as always, to look at the score sheet, and there's a lot of guys we can talk about. Of course, Monty making 36 saves, which has kind of become standard for him, but the first guy I wanted to mention is Jordan Harris. You know that he's seen his name probably in trade rumors, but what a game from him. A sick pass to Tanner Pearson for him to get a goal, snapping a 14-game goalless streak, and Harris himself in a 2-on-1 with an absolute snipe. If he doesn't get traded, hey, that's pretty great by me, and if he is looking to be on the market, his stock is just going up and up. What a fantastic game.
It's a win-win. You know, what a snipe there. And again, the great shot, but just to be able to get in that position. You know, what's so great about Harris and what separates him is his mobility. Just being able to skate, you know, really take the puck up the ice. So we're so happy because we know that it's there. We saw a little bit more of this last year, and we're almost expecting, you know, that it's always the progression that's going to be linear. Sometimes it takes a little bit. You know, they're going to take a step back, you know, just to take a couple steps forward. So hopefully this is what we're seeing from Harris. I definitely want to see, but I mean, he wasn't the only one with the snipe tonight. You know, Armia definitely had one too.
Oh man, that line, I mean, that Newhook Armia line, it's something that, you know, when we saw Anderson was on that line for a little bit, we're like, oh no, oh no. And we'll get into Anderson a bit later, some crazy stuff there, but that line has really shown some promise. I mean, Newhook and Wah have amazing chemistry. Armia recently, like, again, I keep saying this. He's had a couple of dud games, but that's kind of just what you get with the Yoel Armia experience. He's not always on the top of his game, and that's fine, but it feels like recently he's really honed in his skills, his offensive skills, especially his puck movement and his shot. He has 10 goals now on the season, and, you know, I might as well say this now, Jesse. Dave Pagnotta also posted a tweet during the game. He's like, hey, Yoel Armia could be a good rental, not even rental, good buy for a contending team. He has 10 goals and he has a ton of skill. He's been also one of the Habs' top penalty killers and one of the guys out there when the Coyotes had their goalie pulled. I mean, at this point, do you think the trade market is increasing for Armia as well? Because he has been really, really good.
It has to be. His 10 goals so far is very respectable for considering he's played a good part of the season in the AHL, some injuries and everything else. Like, he's shown that he can, you know, add to a team offensively, but very good on the PK as well. You know, who's out on the ice with Nick Suzuki at the end of the game, you know, with the goalie pulled, kind of coming down to the wire. It's your boy Yoel Armia right again, right? So it's kind of surprising, right, to see this. We all kind of discarded him once he got put on waivers, but to really kind of come back and, you know, from being put on waivers, getting sent down to now actually having some value, I think that we could get something that kind of work for us just in terms of, you know, just kind of clearing up some space, you know, but for him also maybe giving him a chance to kind of compete this year.
Yeah, really, really glad to see that Armia has been so good. Hoping that the team might want to give the Habs some assets for him. I mean, like, hey, I'm cool with Armia sticking around for a bit, but he does have $3.4 million for another couple of years. So, you know, if he goes, he goes. We'll see what happens there. Not sure if there's going to be a huge market. Before we move on to the next part, Jesse, quick shout out to Cayden Guhle, who led the team in ice time tonight. I think Guhle's defense has been, over the last few games especially, he's been an absolute menace on defense. I don't know what's gotten into him. I know he's always kind of been like that, but since he's been paired with Mike Matheson, I know right D is not what he would ideally like to be playing, but my gosh, he has been on another level on defense.
And that's almost what makes it so surprising that he's doing this as a right-handed defenseman right now. But I feel like almost being paired with Matheson is, you know, both of them being such great skaters, it's really bringing that out. And I'm so happy that they're kind of listening to the analytics, right? Because the Savard Matheson pairing, just, you know, the numbers weren't really lying when it comes to there. So I'm not surprised to be seeing a little bit of better results. But yeah, absolutely, Guhle jumping into the game offensively, big body checks, you know, like this guy, he just surprises you all the time. He doesn't look like the biggest guy, but this guy can really knock guys off the puck. just so amazing to see him just continue to just progress in this type of way.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what else he could do. By the way, on Cap Friendly, they rank players. They give him kind of an overall rating based on their pairing. They gave Guhle, he's like in the 90th percentile of top pairing defensemen, according to their metrics. So just a little shout out there. Caught me off guard. Apparently, according to them, the best defenseman on the Habs. So we take the stats that we'd like to hear. But we'll move on quickly to the second part. And this was an article on, I believe, TSN just a day or two ago, and it was talking about Suzuki and Caufield, and this was very evident in this game, Jesse. But, the Habs, they still give up a lot of shots. They still have some lackluster moments defensively, but it's definitely better than last year, and that is in large part due to Caufield and Suzuki. Let's just take a look at their even strength goal differential per 60 with and without. It's increasing over the last 3 seasons. Same thing for the expected goal differential per 60. So what's the actual production is and what the expected production is, they have been doing amazing. And this season, maybe not so much of a coincidence that Slafkovsky has been on their line. It has really allowed them to thrive at even strength, but the big thing here, Jesse, is their defensive improvement, especially Caufield. If we take a look at this graph, this is kind of a rolling expected goal differential against. So how many, goals the other team's expected to kind of score versus you. And if you look there, January 2024, as we head into February, there was a sharp decline there. As the season started and season got rolling, Suzuki and Caufield, their defensive game has been on another level, which is leading to a lot fewer high-danger scoring chances in front of Montembeault, Primeau, and Allen, who have also played really well. This is maybe one of the more underrated aspects of the season. I know we've talked a lot about Suzuki's incredible defense this year, and sort of in passing about Caufield, but to see that they've both really stepped it up is... I mean, it's just absolutely amazing to see.
And it's really important because it's a sign of this team just becoming so much more complete and really maturing as a team. And one of the big takeaways is, again, Suzuki, we always knew him as being like a very complete hockey player, but it's nice to see them rounding out their games in different ways. Now Suzuki becoming even more of a goal scorer as well as a playmaker to kind of complement that line even more. 10 goals in his last 10 games, but Caufield as well rounding out his game. Of course, the goal scorer, but now being able to play a little bit more defensively. And my big takeaway from that is in Cole Caufield, we have a really young and talented player, but also somebody that's open to feedback and open to listening to his coaches, which for me is a huge sign for this young team, right? And to get this right for a first line that, you can score, but, if we're not playing good defense, that doesn't really matter. And I love that Martin St. Louis is really holding the team accountable in this type of way, because it does matter. This is lost on many teams, right? You can score goals, you can have offense, but you really need to play both ways. Cole Caufield notably is picking up on this. I think having Slap on his line is definitely helped to kind of complete that, and they do definitely complement each other very well. But make no mistake about it, this is very big for individual players to recognize what their roles are, what they need to do better. And the stats are showing that they're putting into practice. And this is going to be really big for just the identity of this team moving forward.
Yeah, and it's good for mentorship as well. I mean, if your leaders who are quite young are showing this, you got to think the young guys are going to take after. Like, holy, Cole Caufield's responsible defensively. Well, I better kick my butt into gear. Even though his goals are down, I mean, his playmaking numbers have been up, his assists have been up. He had a great point streak there, obviously, recently. He's been playing so well. So really awesome stuff from both of them. And like you said, it sets a really good example for the rest of the team. Final thing we want to talk a little bit about is some Josh Anderson news. Yes, we all thought the trade talks were dead surrounding Josh Anderson come maybe even last offseason into this season, as he was just not producing. And hey, he's still not producing, but Dave Pagnotta today on Montreal 690 was saying that teams are looking at Josh Anderson. Now, we will admit, he does say that the market is very close to being non-existent for Anderson, but he did say teams are interested. He said teams are kind of looking for him, right? And at this point, I assume what he means is that Kent Hughes is probably asking for more than teams are willing to pay for Anderson. But he went on to say that some clubs think a change of scenery could possibly revive Anderson, and that there's still a good hockey player to emerge. It's a bit like what Louis Jean said recently. He's a big power forward, and he's seen as a playoff player by many clubs. But of course, he has that $5.5 million cap hit for this season and the next 3 with only 16 points in 54 games. Now, even though they acknowledge that the market is not that big for Anderson, in fact, it'll be quite difficult to find a suitor for his contract, I think it makes a ton of sense that teams are still calling on him, because right now, if you've ever been a Josh Anderson believer, like maybe we have, but if you're another team that wants him, this is the best time to go after him. You buy him at his lowest possible value. You might even get the Habs to toss in an asset if Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton determine, hey, it's time to move on from this contract. It just seems like it could work out well. Maybe the Habs give up like a third round pick, and maybe they just kind of get rid of stuff and just say, hey, just take Josh Anderson and he thrives somewhere else. I would love that. I would love to see Josh Anderson succeed, but the fact teams are calling, Jesse, it's getting me a little excited. Maybe not optimistic or certain that a trade's going to happen, but I really like to hear that this trade market is absolutely not dead.
It's true. And almost the sad part about this is you almost feel like Josh Anderson, as soon as he gets traded, is this going to light it up for another team for a while, though? And that's the problem, is this the consistency in Josh Anderson's game. You know, as the article cites, it's like, we know that there's a good hockey player there. It's just bringing out on a night in, night out basis. There's some very interesting statistics that show, though, that Josh Anderson just isn't shooting at all. In 5 of his last 13 games where he's gone on the goal streak, just hasn't shot the puck at all in almost half of the game. So, of course, you know, that type of goalless streak is going to continue under those circumstances, which lends you to believe that if we are doing a trade, almost the best we can kind of hope for is just getting back a contract with a bad contract at that, with just a little bit less term on that, which in itself might be a win at this point. It might be the better route, but I mean, he's a playoff type of player, right? So you feel like maybe his value would be a little bit higher right now, but maybe there's a little bit more cap space in the offseason. You know, definitely regardless, you have to feel like this move is just coming sooner than later, and probably be for the best for Josh Anderson and for this team moving forward in their own way.
Yeah, I mean, taking out a bad contract that maybe has slightly lower term, you can maybe then flip that for another bad. Like, there's ways to make this work. But yeah, just awesome to hear that teams are still inquiring. I mean, not to say that it's awesome that Josh Anderson might get traded. I still like Josh Anderson. I really hope he turns it around, whether it's in Montreal or somewhere else. But I'm sure a lot of you guys, along with us, are pretty relieved to hear that this trade could, in fact, end up happening, even if not by the deadline, by this offseason. What do you guys think of teams still looking to try and get Josh Anderson, despite the fact that it might be an impossible trade to pull off with all the salary stuff? We'd love to hear from you down below. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed and you're still watching at this point in the video, leave a like and hit subscribe to the channel, because we'd really appreciate it, as we're on our road to 15,000. I'm Josh Gosse, for my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.